The rain hit the windshield like bullets. Maya Harrington squinted through the downpour, highway signs blurring into streaks of white and green. Her rental sedan drifted slightly across the lane marker, just a heartbeat. A moment of exhaustion after 20 hours of travel. Red and blue lights exploded in her rearview mirror. She pulled onto the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath tires. Her hands moved to 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, visible still. The cop car sat behind her for 30 seconds, 40 a full minute. Rain drummed against metal. Then the door opened. Officer Derek Coleman approached with the swagger of a man who'd never been questioned. His flashlight beam cut through her window, blinding. He didn't ask. He commanded, "License and registration." Maya reached slowly for the glove compartment. "Good evening, officer. Did I say you could talk?" His voice carried 20 years of unchecked authority. She handed him the documents. He studied them under the flashlight, then studied her face. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition not of her identity, but of her skin. His jaw tightened. "Step out of the vehicle." "Sir, I only drifted slightly." "I'm happy to—" "Out now!" His hand moved to his belt. Maya's pulse steadied. She'd been here before, in different forms, different cities. She opened the door and stepped into the rain. Water soaked through her blazer immediately. She stood with hands visible, posture calm, eyes meeting his without challenge or surrender. "You from around here?" Coleman circled her like a predator. "I'm just passing through." "Officer, if there's a citation, I'll accept it and—" "Turn around." Hands on the vehicle. 2 more patrol cars pulled up. Officers emerged but kept their distance, watching. None spoke. The silence between them communicated years of practiced complicity. Maya placed her hands on the wet hood. "Officer Coleman, Shut your mouth." His hands yanked her wrists behind her back, rough, unnecessary. Metal cuffs bit into skin. She didn't resist. Her breathing remained controlled, deliberate. "I'm Captain Maya Harrington, Chicago PD. I'm your incoming—" He laughed. Actually laughed. "Sure you are, sweetheart." "And I'm the governor." The other officers shifted uncomfortably. One young woman looked away. Nobody intervened. Coleman leaned close, his breath hot against her ear. "Know what I think?" "I think you're someone who doesn't know her place." Maya's voice stayed level. "Check your department emails." "I start tomorrow morning as—" He shoved her forward. Her ribs slammed against the car hood. Before she could recover, his fist drove into her side, once, twice, brutal and calculated. Pain exploded through her torso. "Stop resisting," he said loudly. "For the dashcam, for the witnesses, for the lie." She hadn't moved. She hadn't fought back. She'd only breathed through the agony and kept her eyes open, locked on his face, memorizing every detail of this moment. His smile was a threat and a promise. He had no idea he'd just ended his career. In the darkness and the rain, justice was already moving. 12 hours earlier, Maya had driven into Millbrook with her windows down and hope in her chest. The town hadn't changed much since childhood summers, visiting her father's precinct. Same brick buildings, same railroad crossing, same diner with the flickering neon sign. The police station sat at the town's heart like an old fortress. 3 stories of limestone and narrow windows, built in 1952, when the department employed 8 officers. Now it housed 42. Maya parked in the visitor's lot and sat for a moment, studying the building her father had once walked into with pride. Captain Leonard Harrington had served here for 12 years before the transfer, before the silence became unbearable, before his idealism cracked under the weight of institutional protection for bad cops. He'd died 3 years ago, heart attack at 59, but Maya knew the truth. The job had killed him slowly. She'd become a cop because of him, despite him. To prove the badge could mean something more than authority and ego. 20 years in Chicago, working her way from patrol to detective to captain, earning every promotion through closed cases and community trust. The Millbrook chief position appeared in her inbox like fate. "Come home," the job posting seemed to whisper. "Finish what your father started. Maya grabbed her briefcase and stepped into the afternoon sun. Inside the station, the air smelled of old coffee and floor wax. The front desk sergeant looked up, middle-aged, white, mustache trim and suspicious eyes. "Help you? Captain Maya Harrington? I'm scheduled to meet with Chief Brennan before he retires." Recognition flickered across his face. "Harrington? Like Leonard Harrington?" "My father." The sergeant's expression shifted, something between respect and wariness. "He was a good man. Shame he left." The words carried weight, accusation hidden beneath courtesy. Chief Brennan emerged from his office, 63 and ready for Florida beaches. His handshake was firm, but his eyes were tired. "Captain Harrington, welcome." He didn't sound welcoming. The tour was brief. Roll call room, evidence locker, shooting range. Officers they passed nodded politely, but conversation stopped when she approached. The station felt like a church where everyone knew the sermon was a lie, but kept attending anyway. "Department's got some history," Brennan said carefully as they returned to his office. "Your father probably told you." "He did." "Things have changed since then." Maya met his eyes. "Have they?" Brennan looked away first. He handed her the keys to the chief's office, the weight of 26 years of looking the other way transferring between palms. "Good luck, Captain. You'll need it." She checked into a hotel that evening, too exhausted to unpack properly. Tomorrow she'd take command. Tomorrow she'd meet the officers who would either support her reforms or fight them. Tomorrow everything would begin. She had no idea it already had. The traffic stop began as routine. In Coleman's mind, they all did. 23 years on patrol had taught him that authority was performance. You established dominance immediately or you lost control. The black woman in the rental car had drifted across the line. Barely. Maybe. He'd been looking for a reason and found one. His instincts told him something was off about her. Too confident, too composed, too well dressed for this neighborhood at this hour. When she spoke, her voice had education in it. Chicago accent. That made it worse somehow. Outsiders thinking they belonged here. Step out of the vehicle. She complied too smoothly, like she'd done this before. That irritated him. Compliance should look like fear. Hers looked like patience. He hated patience. It implied judgment. "You from around here?" "I'm just passing through." "Officer, if there's a citation—" She was handling him, trying to de-escalate. That really irritated him. Who was she to manage his traffic stop? He circled her, reading body language, looking for the flinch that would justify escalation. Martinez and Chen had pulled up, their cruisers flanking his. Good. Witnesses to whatever story he decided to tell. Martinez was solid, 15 years, never questioned an arrest. Chen was new, still learning how things worked. Turn around. Hands on the vehicle. When she mentioned being a captain, he almost believed her for a second. Then he remembered where they were. Millbrook didn't hire black female chiefs. Brennan was retiring, sure, but the town council would pick someone internal. Someone who understood tradition. "Sure you are, sweetheart. And I'm the governor." Martinez smirked. Chen looked uncomfortable. Neither moved to intervene. That was all the permission Coleman needed. Her voice stayed calm, kept insisting she was law enforcement, kept saying she started tomorrow. The lies made him angrier. Did she think he was stupid? Did she think he wouldn't check? He shoved her against the hood. She didn't fight back. They never did when the odds were 3-1. But her eyes stayed open, watching, recording. That infuriated him most of all. His fist drove into her ribs. Twice. Hard enough to hurt. Not hard enough to leave visible marks. The body knows where bruises hide from cameras. "Stop resisting," he announced clearly. She hadn't resisted. She'd barely breathed. But his words would be on the recording, and his 23 years of credibility would outweigh her silence. The system worked because men like him understood how to work it. He cuffed her loosely, just tight enough to make the point, and guided her to his cruiser. She moved without resistance, her breathing controlled, her face unreadable. "We'll sort this out at the station," he said, almost gentle now. The violence was over. Now came the paperwork and the process, and the eventual dismissal of whatever complaint she thought she'd file. Martinez helped her into the back seat. Chen stood by her cruiser, hand on her radio, conflicted. Coleman caught her eye and shook his head once. She lowered her hand. At the station, they processed her quickly. No charges. Brennan wouldn't appreciate the paperwork on his last day. Just a warning, a lesson, a reminder of how things worked in Millbrook for people who forgot their place. She took the citation without comment, signed the release form, and walked out into the rain. Coleman watched her go, satisfied. Another shift, another citizen reminded who wore the badge. He had no idea his world had just ended. Behind him, Chen uploaded the dashcam footage to the server. 2 copies, one official, one backup, just in case. Maya sat on the hotel bed with ice pressed against her ribs. The pain was sharp, familiar. She'd taken worse in academy training, in domestic violence calls gone sideways, in the 100 small battles that came with the uniform. But this was different. This was malice. She could still feel Coleman's breath against her ear, still hear his laughter, still see the other officers' faces, some guilty, some indifferent, all silent. 23 years he'd worn that badge. How many others had he brutalized in that time? How many complaints disappeared into filing cabinets? The badge sat in her suitcase across the room, Chief's insignia gleaming in the lamplight. Tomorrow morning she was supposed to pin it on and take command of a department that had just assaulted her. The irony was almost funny. Almost her phone buzzed. Text from her sister in Chicago. "Call me when you get settled. Want to hear about the new job." Maya typed, "Settling in. Call tomorrow." She couldn't explain this yet. Didn't have the words. She stood and walked to the window. Millbrook stretched below. Streetlights and shadows, quiet houses. The kind of town that believed in law and order without questioning whose law, whose order. Her father had tried to change it from the inside. They'd driven him out. Now she was back. And she was in charge. The ice pack slipped from her fingers, hit the floor. She left it there. The pain was information now. Motivation. Evidence that the system her father fought against was alive and thriving, just waiting for the right person to tear it down. In the window's reflection, she saw her father's face overlapping hers. His voice echoed from years ago. "Authority without accountability is tyranny." Maya, never forget that. She hadn't. She wouldn't. Tomorrow morning she'd walk into that station wearing her new badge, and Coleman would see her face and realize his world had shifted. She'd watch recognition dawn, watch the confidence crumble, watch him understand that every punch, every cruel word, every second of that traffic stop was recorded. The ice melted into the carpet. Outside, rain continued falling. Inside, something harder than ice was forming. Justice didn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it arrived quietly, bruised but unbroken, waiting for morning. 26 years ago, Maya was 12 years old when her father came home from his shift and sat at the kitchen table without speaking. Her mother poured coffee he didn't drink. Maya did homework she didn't finish. The silence felt like waiting. "I filed a complaint today," he finally said, "against Officers Dalton and Reeves." Her mother's hand froze on the coffee pot. "Leonard, they falsified an arrest report, planted evidence on a kid, 17 years old, black, wrong place at wrong time. I saw the body cam footage before they tried to delete it. And you reported it." Her mother's voice carried resignation, not surprise. "I took an oath, Carmen. The next 3 months were warfare disguised as police work." Partners stopped responding to his backup calls. His case files got lost. Locker room conversations ended when he entered. Someone spray-painted rat on his cruiser. Internal Affairs investigated him twice for infractions that never happened. Maya watched her father shrink under the weight of institutional retaliation. Not his body, his spirit. The man who taught her about integrity and justice came home each night a little more defeated, a little more alone. "Why don't you quit?" she asked one evening. He looked at her with tired eyes. "Because if good cops leave, only bad cops remain. Someone has to stay and fight." But eventually even Leonard Harrington had limits. The transfer to Chicago came through. Lateral move, same rank, fresh start. They moved into a smaller house in a bigger city, and her father rebuilt his career piece by piece, earning respect through closed cases and community trust. He never talked about Millbrook. The silence was its own kind of trauma. Maya joined the academy at 22, despite her mother's protests. "You saw what it did to him," Carmen said. "Why would you choose that?" "Because Dad taught me something else," Maya replied. "He taught me that changing a broken system matters more than protecting yourself from it." She rose through Chicago PD ranks by being undeniable. Highest solve rate in her district. Community policing initiatives that actually worked. Leadership courses and awards, and the quiet respect of officers who valued competence over politics. When the Millbrook chief position appeared, she hesitated. Her father's ghost lived in that station, in the complaints he'd filed that went nowhere, in the silence that had driven him away. But maybe that was exactly why she needed to go back. At his funeral 3 years ago, she'd placed his badge in the casket and made a promise. "I'll finish what you started. Dad, I'll make it right." Now his badge sat in her desk drawer. She'd kept a replica, and tomorrow morning she'd carry it into the station where his career had been broken. Not for revenge, for restoration. Her father had taught her that integrity was the price of the badge. Now she'd teach Millbrook that the badge was never above the law. Maya couldn't sleep. The hotel's Wi-Fi was decent, and her laptop contained files she'd been reviewing for weeks. Millbrook PD's public records, budget reports, personnel files that fell under open records laws. Now she dug deeper. The complaint database was technically public, but buried under administrative passwords and bureaucratic mazes. Her Chicago credentials gave her access to law enforcement networks most civilians couldn't reach. She found the Millbrook archive at 2 a.m. Officer Derek Coleman's file opened like a confession. 17 complaints in 5 years. Excessive force. Racial profiling. Inappropriate language. Unlawful detention. Each complaint followed the same pattern. Filed by citizens, investigated by his own department, dismissed for lack of evidence or conflicting testimony. 17 times the system had protected him. 17 times the blue wall had held firm. She cross-referenced the complaints with arrest records. Pattern emerged. 83% of Coleman's arrests involved minorities, in a town that was 62% white. His use of force incidents were 4 times higher than department average. Every metric screamed bias, but every internal review concluded within policy. Maya's hands tightened on the laptop. This wasn't one bad cop. This was institutional protection of a bad cop. Every sergeant who'd signed off on his reports, every captain who'd dismissed complaints, every chief who'd looked the other way. They were all complicit. She opened older files going back decades, and there it was, buried in 1998 archives, her father's original complaint against Dalton and Reeves. She'd never seen the actual document before, only heard the story. The complaint was detailed, professional, backed by evidence. Below it, margin notes in different handwriting. Harrington doesn't understand how things work here. Another note. Talk to him before this becomes a problem. A final note. Transfer approved. Problem solved. They'd erased him. Not fired. That would have been legally complicated. Just isolated him until he left voluntarily, taking his integrity with him, leaving the rot to continue growing. Maya scrolled through personnel files. Some names from her father's era remained. Dalton had retired, pension intact. Reeves had been promoted to sergeant, then retired last year. But their influence lingered in the officers they'd trained, the culture they'd protected. the silence they'd enforced. Coleman was a product of that system. He'd learned from men who'd learned that accountability was optional, that badges granted immunity, that certain people could be brutalized without consequence. The sun rose while she worked. Golden light spilled through hotel curtains. In 6 hours she'd walk into that station as chief. They'd expect her to observe, to learn the culture, to earn acceptance before making changes. Instead, she'd burn the culture to the ground. Her phone showed 6:47 a.m., time to get ready. She showered, dressed in full uniform. Every ribbon and commendation earned over 20 years. The chief's badge felt heavier than captain's bars ever had. In the mirror, her father's eyes looked back at her. Authority without accountability is tyranny. Today, tyranny ended. She grabbed her briefcase, her laptop, and her father's badge. Evidence, legacy, ammunition. The drive to the station took 12 minutes. Every second felt like preparation for battle, because that's what this was, not a new job, a war. The briefing room went silent when Maya walked in. 32 officers mid-conversation, coffee cups frozen halfway to lips, laughter dying in throats. She stood at the front in full dress uniform, chief's badge catching fluorescent light. Coleman sat in the third row, slouched in his chair like he owned the room. His eyes met hers and something happened. A flicker of recognition, confusion, then dawning horror that he tried to bury beneath practiced indifference. "Good morning. I'm Chief Maya Harrington." Her voice carried no anger, no triumph, just authority. "As of 800 hours, I assume command of this department." Martinez whispered something to Coleman. Chen sat 2 rows behind them, spine straight, eyes forward. A few older officers exchanged glances, some calculating, some resigned. Everyone waited to see who would speak first. "Some of you knew my father, Captain Leonard Harrington. He served here with distinction before transferring to Chicago." She paused. "He taught me that the badge is a promise to the community we serve, not a shield from accountability." Coleman's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Smart. For now. Maya outlined her immediate priorities: body camera compliance reviews, complaint investigation protocols, community liaison training, bias recognition workshops. With each item, she watched faces harden. Change meant scrutiny. Scrutiny meant consequences. Consequences meant the old way of operating was over. "Questions?" she asked. Silence. The kind that felt like resistance wearing patience as a mask. "Then you're dismissed. Shift assignments are posted. Sergeant Riley, I need yesterday's incident reports on my desk by noon." Officers filed out, conversations resuming in hushed tones once they cleared the doorway. Coleman stood slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. He knew. The recognition had fully landed. Last night's victim was this morning's boss. But he didn't apologize, didn't approach, just walked past her with the faint smile of a man who believed the Union and Brotherhood would protect him like they'd protected everyone before him. Maya watched him go. He thought this was a temporary inconvenience. He thought she'd negotiate, play politics, trade silence for cooperation. He didn't understand yet that she hadn't come to negotiate. She'd come to rebuild. And you couldn't rebuild on a rotten foundation. You had to tear it down first. In her new office, she unpacked her father's badge and placed it on the desk beside her own. 2 generations, 2 fights. One war, the phone rang. Union representative requesting a meeting. She scheduled it for tomorrow. Let them prepare their defenses. She already had hers. The truth, documented and undeniable. Outside her window, Coleman climbed into his cruiser for patrol. He lit a cigarette, exhaled smoke, drove away like nothing had changed. But everything had. He just didn't know it yet. The calm before the storm always felt like victory to people who'd never faced a storm. Coleman appeared at her door 3 hours later. He knocked twice, entered without waiting for permission, closed the door behind him. The gesture was deliberate. Privacy for a conversation he wanted off record. "Chief." He leaned against her desk, casual, like they were equals. We got off on the wrong foot last night. Maya set down her pen, waited. I didn't know who you were, obviously. He spread his hands, a performance of reasonableness. Traffic stop grew heated. Things happen in the field. You understand? Do I? You're a cop. You know how it is. Adrenaline, stress, split-second decisions. He shrugged. I'm sorry if I felt. Maya's voice stayed level. Officer Coleman, you assaulted me during an unlawful detention after I identified myself multiple times. His expression shifted, reasonableness sliding toward something harder. That's your interpretation. I was following protocol for a non-compliant suspect. I wasn't non-compliant. Again, your interpretation. He straightened, no longer leaning. Look, Chief, I've been on this force 23 years. I know how this town works. The union reps, the city council, the officers, they value stability, continuity. Is that a threat? It's reality. He moved toward the door, hand on the knob. Your father learned that reality the hard way. Tried to change things, file complaints, upset the balance. He paused. Didn't work out well for him, did it? Maya's hands remained flat on her desk. Still. Controlled. Coleman opened the door halfway, then turned back. 23 years I've served this community. One complaint from you isn't going to change that. The Brotherhood takes care of its own. He left. The door clicked shut. Maya counted to 10, breathing through the rage that wanted to explode. He'd threatened her, invoked her father, confirmed everything she'd suspected about the department's culture. Her phone buzzed. Anonymous text from a blocked number. Drop it or the dashcam footage disappears. You can't win this. She stared at the message. They were coordinating. Coleman, union reps, maybe others. Circling wagons. Preparing to bury her complaint the way they'd buried 17 others. Another text. Think about your career. Chicago will take you back. This doesn't have to get ugly. Maya's thumb hovered over the delete button. Then she screenshotted both messages instead. Evidence, witness, intimidation. Federal crime if she could prove conspiracy. Her office suddenly felt smaller. The station outside her door felt hostile. Every officer she'd greeted this morning was now a potential enemy. Every conversation was potentially monitored. Every move she made was being watched, judged, strategized against. She was alone in a building full of people who wanted her gone. Just like her father had been. History repeating with brutal precision. But history didn't have to end the same way. Her father had been isolated, unsupported, facing this fight without allies. She had something he hadn't, authority, and the willingness to burn everything down to use it. Her phone rang, Captain Morris from Chicago, her old mentor. Maya, I heard a rumor you're having trouble. Need backup? The lifeline came at the exact moment she needed it. She almost cried, yeah, she said quietly. I need backup. Outside her window, Coleman's cruiser pulled back into the lot. He sat inside for a long moment, talking on his phone, laughing. Confident, untouchable. Not for long. By the end of week 1, Maya understood what psychological warfare felt like. Officers arrived late to briefings. Reports appeared on her desk with errors requiring resubmission. Dispatch routed calls inefficiently. Small acts of defiance that individually meant nothing, but collectively screamed resistance. The union scheduled a no-confidence meeting for the following Monday. 40 officers signed the petition. Only Chen and 3 others refused. The local newspaper ran an editorial questioning whether an outsider could effectively lead Millbrook PD. Someone spray-painted, "Go back to Chicago" on her personal car, not the department vehicle, her personal Honda in the hotel parking lot. The message was clear. We know where you live. Maya filed a report. The investigation went nowhere. No witnesses. No security footage. No suspects. The detective assigned to her case was Coleman's partner, Martinez. The irony was so blatant it felt like mockery. She ate lunch alone in her office. walked the halls and watched conversations stop. Made suggestions in briefings and got met with silent stares. Her authority was theoretical. Her power was resisted at every turn. At night she called her sister. "It's worse than I thought, Carmen. They've frozen me out completely. Come home, Maya. Chicago PD will take you back. You don't have to prove anything." But she did. To her father's memory. To herself. To every officer who'd ever been brutalized by cops like Coleman and told the system couldn't change. She sat in her hotel room on Friday evening, her father's badge in her palm, and felt the weight of isolation. He'd sat in rooms like this, feeling this same despair, wondering if integrity was worth the cost he'd left. She'd always wondered if that made him wise or defeated. Now she understood it made him human. There was only so much one person could endure alone. Her phone was silent. No calls from officers seeking guidance. No texts from colleagues offering support. Just her and the bruises, healing now. And the knowledge that Coleman walked free while she sat trapped in the role meant to stop people like him. The badge in her hand caught lamplight. Her father's name engraved on the back. She traced the letters with her thumb, remembering his voice. Someone has to stay and fight, maybe. But someone also had to be smart about how they fought. Frontal assault had failed. She needed a different strategy. She needed the one thing they couldn't control, the truth documented and irrefutable. Outside her window, Millbrook slept peacefully. Inside her chest, something shifted from despair to calculation. She wasn't beaten. She was just fighting the wrong battle, time to change tactics. The knock came at 11 p.m. Maya opened her hotel door to find Officer Sarah Chen standing in civilian clothes, baseball cap pulled low, hands shoved in pockets. "Can I come in?" Chen's voice was barely above whisper. Maya stepped aside. Chen entered quickly, glancing down the hallway before the door closed. She pulled a USB drive from her jacket pocket and set it on the desk like it was evidence at a crime scene. "Dashcam footage from your traffic stop, plus 3 years of incidents I've been documenting." Chen's hands shook slightly. "Coleman, Martinez, 6 others. Every questionable arrest, every excessive force complaint, every time I was told to look the other way." Maya stared at the USB drive. "Why?" "Because I didn't join this job to be Coleman. I joined to be someone like your father." Chen's eyes were fierce. "I read his complaint from 1998, found it in archived files. He tried to do the right thing, and they destroyed him for it. I'm tired of being part of that." Maya plugged the drive into her laptop. Files filled the screen, dozens of video clips, incident reports, complaint forms with dismissal notes. Years of evidence. Chen had been preparing for this moment, waiting for someone who'd actually use it. "They'll retaliate against you," Maya said quietly. "I know." Chen sat on the bed's edge. "But I can't look at myself in the mirror anymore. That traffic stop, watching him hurt you, knowing who you were, standing there doing nothing, I'm done being silent." They spent 2 hours reviewing files. Pattern after pattern emerged. Coleman's excessive force, Martinez's falsified reports, Sergeant Riley signing off on incidents he couldn't have witnessed. A system of protection that ran through the department like rot through wood. "There's more," Chen said. She pulled up an audio file. "Union rep meeting from 2 days ago. I recorded it." Coleman's voice filled the room. "She's trying to change things too fast. We need to make her quit before she starts digging. Worked with her father." "Work with her?" Maya's hands clenched. Conspiracy documented, undeniable. She grabbed her phone and called Captain Morris in Chicago. He answered despite the late hour. "I'm sending you files. I need you to forward them to the State Attorney General's Civil Rights Division. Specifically Diane Keller." "Keller?" Morris's voice sharpened. "That's serious. She prosecutes police corruption." "I know." Maya sent the files. "I'm about 48 hours from being forced out. I need intervention from above before they bury me." Morris was quiet for a moment. "Keller and I worked a case together 2 years ago. She's tough. I'll make the introduction. But Maya, once you go this route, federal investigation, public scandal, you can't walk it back. I don't want to walk it back. I want justice. She hung up. Chen watched her with something like awe. You're really doing this? Taking on the whole department? Not the whole department, Maya corrected. Just the parts that are broken. Officers like you, the ones who still believe in the oath, we're going to rebuild around you. Chen nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Keep documenting. Keep your head down. When this breaks, I'll need officers willing to testify. Maya met her eyes. Can you handle that? Yes, Chief. For the first time in days, Maya didn't feel alone. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. But now she had allies, evidence, and a federal prosecutor who specialized in exactly this kind of corruption. Coleman thought the Brotherhood would protect him. He didn't realize the law was bigger than brotherhood. Truth was heavier than loyalty. Justice was coming, federal and inevitable. Maya looked at her father's badge on the nightstand. We're finishing this, Dad, together. Outside, Millbrook slept. Inside, Revolution planned its next move. The emergency town hall was standing room only. Someone had leaked that serious allegations would be addressed regarding the police department. Media vans lined the street. Citizens packed the high school auditorium. Black, white, Latino, Asian, young and old. Every demographic that comprised Millbrook's 23,000 residents. Maya stood backstage while the mayor introduced her. Through the curtain gap, she saw Coleman in the front row, arms crossed, confident. Martinez beside him. Union Rep Tom Bradford in the third row. They believed their presence would intimidate her. Strength in numbers. Brotherhood as armor. They had no idea what was about to happen. Chief Harrington, the mayor said, stepping aside. Maya walked to the podium. The room quieted. She set her laptop on the stand, connected it to the projection screen. Behind her, the white canvas loomed 15 feet high. Every detail would be visible. Good evening. I'm Chief Maya Harrington. I've served in law enforcement for 20 years. I've investigated murders, organized crime, human trafficking. I know what corruption looks like. She paused. I also know what justice looks like. Tonight you'll see both. Coleman shifted in his seat. Bradford leaned forward. Maya clicked the first file. Dashcam footage filled the screen. Her rental car drifting slightly. Red and blue lights. Coleman approaching with his flashlight. The audio was crystal clear. Every command, every response, every moment of escalating aggression despite her compliance. The room watched in complete silence as Coleman yanked her from the car, cuffed her roughly, ignored her identification. Then came the moment, his fist driving into her ribs, once, twice, her body slamming against the hood. His voice, "Stop resisting," she hadn't moved. Everyone could see it. Undeniable, recorded, real. Gasps rippled through the audience. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." A woman in the back row started crying. Maya let the video play for 30 more seconds. Her standing in the rain, handcuffed, bleeding internally, while Coleman smiled and Martinez looked away. Then she paused it. "That's me," she said simply. 12 hours before I took command of this department, Officer Derek Coleman assaulted your police chief during an unlawful traffic stop. Coleman stood abruptly. This is out of context. She was... Sit down, Officer Coleman. Maya's voice cut like steel. I'm not finished. Bradford grabbed Coleman's arm, pulled him back into the seat. The union rep's face had gone pale. He knew what was coming. Lawyers always did. Maya played the next video. Different dashcam, different date. A black teenager pulled over for suspicious behavior, walking home from basketball practice. Coleman's hands rough on the kid's shoulders, slamming him against a car. The boy's terrified voice, "I didn't do anything." Coleman's response, "Shut up and comply." Then another video. Latino veteran, decorated uniform visible, pulled over for a broken taillight. Coleman's aggressive search of the vehicle. Items thrown onto the pavement. The veteran's calm explanation cut short by Coleman's dismissive, "I don't care about your service. You're in my town now," then another, elderly black woman confused about why she'd been stopped. Coleman's impatient commands, her frightened compliance, his rough handling when she moved too slowly. 4 videos, 4 victims, 4 examples of the same pattern. Abuse of authority, racial bias, zero accountability. The auditorium was completely silent, except for the video's audio. People were recording on phones. Media cameras captured everything. The truth was being broadcast in real time, undeniable and devastating. Maya stopped the final video. These are just 4 incidents from 3 years of documented misconduct. Officer Chen has provided the Attorney General's office with 37 additional cases. Every complaint dismissed. Every incident buried. Every victim told the system didn't believe them. She turned to face Coleman directly. His face had gone red, then white, then expressionless. The look of a man watching his career end in real time. "State investigators from the Civil Rights Division are outside right now," Maya continued. "They have warrants for Officer Derek Coleman, Officer Luis Martinez, Sergeant James Riley, and former Union Representative Tom Bradford. The charges include conspiracy to violate civil rights, falsifying police reports, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice." The auditorium doors opened. 4 investigators in suits entered, badges visible. Coleman started to stand. One investigator gestured for him to remain seated. "You can't do this," Coleman said, voice cracking. 23 years I've served." "You've abused," Maya corrected. "For 23 years, you've used your badge as a weapon against the community you swore to protect. That ends today." The lead investigator approached Coleman. "Officer Derek Coleman, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." The Miranda rights echoed through the auditorium. People watched in shocked silence as Coleman was handcuffed, the same cuffs he'd used on countless victims, now binding his own wrists. Martinez was next, then Riley, then Bradford. As they were led out, the room erupted. Some people applauded, others cried. A few officers in the audience sat frozen, realizing their own conduct might be next under scrutiny. The town was witnessing the collapse of a system they'd either trusted blindly or feared silently. Maya returned to the microphone. "This department failed you. It failed my father 26 years ago when he tried to report misconduct. It failed every citizen who filed a complaint and was dismissed. It failed the oath we all took to serve and protect." She paused. "But failure doesn't have to be permanent. Starting tonight, we rebuild. With transparency, with accountability, with officers who understand the badge is a promise, not a shield." The applause was thunderous. Not everyone joined. Some officers walked out in protest. But the majority remained, standing, clapping, some with tears streaming down their faces. Years of injustice acknowledged. Decades of silence broken. Truth hadn't just won. It had shattered every lie that held the old system together. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the briefing room addressing a very different department. Coleman, Martinez, Riley, and Bradford were facing federal charges. 4 other officers had resigned rather than face investigation. The union had elected new leadership committed to reform. "Good morning," she began. "Before we start, I want to introduce Sergeant Sarah Chen." Chen stepped forward, her new stripes gleaming. The room offered genuine applause. She'd earned respect by choosing integrity over loyalty. 3 other officers had also been promoted based on merit. Not seniority or politics. Maya outlined new protocols, mandatory body camera reviews, citizen oversight board, bias training from independent consultants, mental health resources for officers dealing with the stress of the transition. Every suggestion came from community meetings she'd held over the past weeks. "Change is hard," she acknowledged. "Some of you are angry, some scared, some uncertain if you still belong here." She met their eyes. "I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be accountable. That's the only requirement moving forward." The mood was cautious but no longer hostile. Officers who'd initially resisted were seeing results. Community trust slowly returning, fewer complaints, better relationships with neighborhoods that had been over-policed for years. Some cops genuinely wanted to be good at their jobs. Now they had leadership that helped them, instead of protected the worst among them. After the briefing, Maya drove to Oakwood Cemetery. Her father's grave sat beneath a maple tree, the headstone simple. Captain Leonard Harrington, 1962 to 2022, served with honor. She knelt and placed her chief's badge beside his captain's badge, the replica she'd kept for years. 2 generations. 2 fights. 1 victory. We did it, Dad, she whispered. Coleman's facing 20 years federal prison. The culture you tried to change is finally changing. It took 26 years and your daughter becoming chief, but justice won. Wind rustled the maple leaves. Somewhere nearby, birds sang. The moment felt sacred, suspended between grief and triumph. I wish you were here to see it, she continued. But I think maybe you are. In every officer who chooses integrity now, in every policy that prioritizes accountability, in the badge I wear that finally means what you always believed it should. She stood, touching the headstone one last time. Her father couldn't answer, but she felt the response in her chest: pride, relief, peace. The burden he'd carried, the knowledge that he'd tried and failed, was lifted. She'd carried it across the finish line. Driving back to the station, Maya passed the spot where Coleman had pulled her over. The shoulder where she'd stood in the rain, bruised and handcuffed, not knowing that moment would catalyze everything that followed. Sometimes justice required you to endure injustice first, to document it, to survive it, to transform it into evidence that couldn't be ignored. Her ribs had healed. The bruises were gone. But the memory remained sharp and clarifying. She'd never forget what it felt like to be powerless. That memory would inform every decision she made as chief. At the station, officers greeted her by name now. Some warmly, some neutrally, but all with the understanding that she was here to stay. The Brotherhood hadn't protected Coleman. The truth had destroyed him. That lesson echoed through every hallway, every shift change, every moment an officer considered whether to abuse their authority. Maya walked into her office. Her father's badge still sat on her desk beside her own. She'd keep it there, a reminder, a legacy, a promise fulfilled. Outside her window, Millbrook looked exactly the same, but everything had changed. 6 months into her tenure, Maya received a letter from a woman named Teresa Martinez, no relation to the arrested officer. The handwriting was shaky but deliberate. Chief Harrington, my son was stopped by Officer Coleman 2 years ago. He was terrified. I filed a complaint. Nothing happened. I stopped trusting police after that, but I saw the town hall footage online. I saw you hold them accountable. My son trusts police again now. Thank you for making this town safer. Thank you for proving the badge can mean something good. Maya folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer alongside a dozen others like it. These were her true commendations, not plaques or medals, but restored faith in a system that had broken trust through decades of abuse. She thought about Coleman, sitting in a federal holding cell awaiting trial. He'd believed his 23 years of service would protect him. He'd believed the Brotherhood was stronger than justice. He'd been wrong on both counts. Service without integrity wasn't service. It was cosplay. And Brotherhood that protected abusers wasn't Brotherhood. It was conspiracy. Real change had started when silence became unacceptable. When one officer, Chen, chose documentation over complicity. When evidence became undeniable. When federal law proved bigger than local corruption. But it had also started earlier, 26 years ago. When her father filed a complaint, knowing it would cost him everything. His fight hadn't been futile. It had been foundational. He'd planted seeds that took decades to grow, but they'd grown. Justice was often generational. Maya walked to the window. Evening light painted Millbrook in gold and amber. Officers changed shifts below. Chen laughed at something another officer said. The parking lot felt lighter somehow, less weighed down by secrets and shame. Authority without accountability was tyranny. Her father had taught her that. Now she taught an entire department that accountability wasn't punishment. It was liberation. Liberation from the burden of covering for bad cops. Liberation from the fear of retaliation for doing the right thing. Liberation from a culture that demanded loyalty over integrity. The badge on her chest caught the sunset's reflection. It represented something now that Coleman's badge never had. A promise kept, not a threat made. Power used to protect, not to dominate. Authority earned through service, not stolen through violence. She thought about the traffic stop that had started everything. The rain, the pain. The moment Coleman's fist connected, and she'd chosen not to break. That moment had been a test she didn't know she was taking. And she'd passed by remaining exactly who she'd always been. Uncompromising, undeniable, unbroken. Sometimes justice required you to endure injustice first. To document it. To transform it into evidence. To carry it forward until truth became too heavy for lies to hold back. Her phone buzzed. Text from Chen. Community meeting went great. 50 people showed up, actually talking to us instead of at us. This is progress. Maya smiled. Progress. Slow, difficult, necessary progress. The kind her father had dreamed of but never witnessed. The kind she was building one decision, one policy, one honest conversation at a time. She typed back, "That's what real policing looks like. Keep going." Outside, the sun completed its descent. Darkness arrived gradually, naturally. Inside the station, lights stayed on. Officers worked. The community slept more peacefully now, knowing the people sworn to protect them were finally being held to that promise. Maya returned to her desk. Her father's badge. Her badge. 2 generations, 1 mission, infinite continuation. Because reform wasn't a destination. It was a practice. A daily choice to uphold integrity when compromise would be easier. She opened her laptop and began drafting the quarterly report. Numbers told part of the story. Complaints down 42%. Community satisfaction up 67%. Officer retention improving. Civilian Oversight Board functioning smoothly. But the real story was in the letters. In Teresa Martinez's shaky handwriting. In the teenager who no longer feared police. In the veteran who felt respected. In the community slowly learning to trust the badge again. Real change started when silence became unacceptable, when one person chose courage over complicity, when truth became heavier than the lies protecting it. Coleman had punched her thinking it would silence her. Instead, it had freed her to dismantle everything he represented. That wasn't revenge. That was restoration. Justice didn't always announce itself with sirens. Sometimes it arrived quietly, bruised but unbroken, wearing a chief's badge and carrying a father's legacy. Sometimes it took 26 years. Sometimes it took one perfect moment of documented abuse to bring decades of hidden abuse into the light, but it always arrived, eventually, inevitably, as long as someone refused to stay silent. Maya closed her laptop. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight she'd rest, knowing her father's fight hadn't been in vain. His badge sat beside hers, 2 promises made and kept, 2 generations proving that integrity could survive the badge. The uniform didn't grant authority. Accountability did. And when those who abused power finally faced consequences, that wasn't just justice. That was hope, restored and rising. Building the world her father had dreamed of, one honest decision at a time.